Hello. My question is to Professor Dugard. Is considering international law's inability to extend human rights to the Palestinians, I ask how effective is the framework of international law, and in using South Africa as a model, what was effective international law in comparison to the uprising of the South Africans?
It's interesting to compare the response of the international community to apartheid with the response of the international community to Israel-Palestine. You want to recall that in the early years of apartheid, the apartheid regime was to some extent protected by the Western powers. Britain, France, and the United States cast their vetoes in the Security Council to prevent action from being taken against South Africa in order to abolish discrimination on South Africa. But everything changed over the years. The West realized that apartheid in South Africa had become the litmus test for human rights in the international community, and that it did not take a firm stand against South Africa, that the credibility of the West would suffer. And so we see a movement in the United Nations in the other direction against the apartheid regime, and ultimately the United Nations was able to adopt resolutions imposing economic sanctions or armed embargo on South Africa, and the United States went so far in 1986 as to impose economic sanctions on South Africa. Civil society was outraged, the whole world was outraged. Now compare that with what is happening in Palestine. I don't wish to say that Israel practices apartheid in the occupied territory. It is a military occupier. It is not engaged in institutionalized race discrimination and terrorism. But there are resemblances between the two systems. I won't go into them in detail, but any South African, back to life, who lived through the apartheid years and who has visited the West Bank and Gaza can only be struck by the similarities. And I would go so far as Richard Tutu and others have said, to say that the situation in occupied Palestine is worse than it was in apartheid South Africa. So why has there been so little response on the part of the international community? Well, as I indicated, the developing world is seriously distressed by what is happening in the occupied Palestinian territory, and it calls upon the West to honour its commitment to human rights. But the West fails to respond. I don't have to give the reasons for this. The United States has a large pro-Israeli lobby, both in Jewish community and in the evangelical community. So Israel is very prominent in the foreign policy of the United States, and the United States is determined to protect Israel. But the same applies to the European Union. The European Union, I think, consists of many states that did not behave well, to put it kindly, during the Second World War. And they have a Holocaust guilt. And I think this leads them to treat Israel very kindly as well. So the result is that we find that the West, the United States and the European Union are not prepared to take firm action against Israel. The European Union is more troubled than the United States, and it does provide material welfare to the Palestinian people, but it doesn't go so far as to take firm action against Israel. It doesn't even attempt to enforce the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. So I suppose the moral of the story is that it may take time for the West to realize that the way in which human rights are violated in the occupied Palestinian territory is the litmus test for human rights in the world.